Going. Welcome to episode 21 of the Confident Carnivore podcast, where our motto is change your fuel, change your life. Today's guest, drum roll, is the one and only Bart Kay. Hi, Bart.
Hey, how are you?
Doing great, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank
you
you.
So much for being
Absolute.
Here.
No, not at all. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my absolute privilege to share with you today.
Oh, I'm so excited. So before we dive in, I am going to read a bio about you so people can learn over here. I mean, I think people know who you are for sure in New Zealand and beyond in the UK. So Bart is a former senior leader in cardiovascular. Senior leader. Bart is a former senior lecturer in cardiovascular, respiratory, musculoskeletal physiology, nutrition, and exercise physiology. He is also a well-published research scientist. Bart has completed former consultancies to the New Zealand All Blacks, the New Zealand Army, the Australian Defence Force, and the NRL. What's that?
That's the rugby league down here in
National
Australasia.
Rugby League. Okay, thank you. Bart has a passion for the science of nutrition and the science of health and fitness through optimized lifestyle. Bart has developed a popular YouTube channel and private consultancy business over the past 3 years in parallel to building his, how do you pronounce that?
Cerule, yeah.
Cerule business network. So with that,
Yellow Ted wants to know why he doesn't get a mention. He says he did all the work.
Can you introduce him? Can you give him a brief
of course.
introduction?
This is my constant sidekick and confidant. He actually runs the show. He's in charge. This is Yellow Ted, otherwise known as Field Marshal Lord Edward Yellow. He's been with me since birth. He was given to me at birth by a late aunt, actually, and he's been here ever since. So anyway, Yellow Ted, you've had your moment in the spotlight. Now you go and behave.
That's so wonderful. I didn't know he's been with you since birth.
I've got to keep him a bit under control, Janice. He's got a mouth on him, frankly. You might have seen him.
I know he does. Yeah. We love everything Yellow Ted has to say. So let's quickly, before we dive in, just show you some of your resources. So if you want to talk a bit about your YouTube channel and your other sites.
Sure. So this is my primary YouTube channel. There are 600 and something videos I've made over the last 3 years or so that I've been a YouTube influencer, I guess. Starting from the very basic, very ugly at the beginning, through a 3-year learning curve of learning how to do technology, learning how to do editing, making thumbnails, doing SEO, all that kind of stuff. So you will see I play all sorts of different characters on my videos. I've had all sorts of different interviews with all sorts of different characters at every different level of life, really. I've been involved in 1 or 2 heated discussions / debates over the years as well. It's been a crazy ride. It's been a great deal of fun. It's been both rewarding and heartbreaking in equal measure at various times. But yeah, that's my primary channel. That's where you find most of my work. If you go to the next tab, I've just started a BitChute account in the last day or 2, and I'm going to backfill it. I'm going to populate that with all my classic videos, all my old videos over time. It's going to take quite some time. I've got to manually upload all of those. The reason for the BitChute channel is because YouTube is not behaving in a fashion conducive as to the way they should. They purport to be a platform when in fact they are behaving as a publisher. They are involved in vast and disgraceful levels of censorship. I'm currently in YouTube jail, actually, for 7 days for having the temerity yesterday to post a video wherein I stated a bunch of easily independently verifiable scientific facts. Apparently, scientific facts are no longer acceptable on YouTube. As such, we need alternatives. So BitChute is one, and Odyssey/Library is another alternate platform, which I've been on the Odyssey platform for a lot longer actually than the BitChute channel. Odyssey is a great place as well because they don't censor at all. BitChute and Odyssey, neither of those censor. They allow creators to say what they have to say, basically. And all my videos are on the Odyssey channel, even the ones that used to be on YouTube that are no longer on YouTube, either by YouTube's decision or by mine. So there you go. So you'll find absolutely everything. There's Yellow Ted. Look at him. Goodness me.
You think Yellow Ted is the one getting you in trouble with YouTube?
Well, no. Yellow Ted actually didn't say anything against the YouTube rules. Apparently, the YouTube rules include don't say any easily independently verifiable scientific facts if they don't agree with the narrative that we want to support. So Yellow Shed just swears and curses and carries on. Here's another site. This one is not a media platform. This is not where the videos and things are of me doing and saying things. This is my side hustle. Actually, I say it's my side hustle. This is actually my primary income these days, Janice. This is actually a business I'm involved in, marketing a range of nutraceutical supplements and skincare, which are based on yeah, well, there you go. See, that's how it works. It's easy to sell the stuff. You just show people the site. No, there you go. It's a business opportunity. It's also an opportunity to purchase product if you're not interested in being in business and making money of your own. But anyway, I've been involved with this company and its predecessors now for well over 11 years as a customer myself. And I've only recently in the last 12 months become a really active invigorated marketer of the products and of the business opportunity as well. And in that 12 months, I've set up a mid-range 4 figures a month residual passive income, and that actually grows month on month, every single month. So that Cerule business now earns me more than the YouTube channel, my consultancy, and everything else I'm doing combined. So that's been great. Yeah, it's been a great addition. It's been a fantastic decision to be involved with.
Your skin looks really good.
Yeah, I've been taking this crazy stuff here for 11 years. The reason I started, we could actually get into it. The reason I started taking it really was because about 11 years ago, I went to see an optometrist for a routine prescription lens check. And the optometrist said, look, I'm a bit concerned about what I'm seeing here. This is not what I would like to be seeing. I'm going to refer you to a specialist and we'll get this looked at. Anyway, I waited out my time, as you do, because you can't get straight in. And I went to see said specialist, who happens to be the best eye specialist in New Zealand, where I live, or lived at the time and now do live again. Anyway, the specialist said to me, you have advanced age-related macular degeneration, he said, which is a condition where the macula in the back of your eye start to degrade and fall to bits. They call it age-related because normally people are in their mid-70s by the time this disease shows up. I was 38 at the time.
Oh my.
And the optometrist said to me, so the good news is we have a clear diagnosis. Absolutely, you have age-related macular degeneration. The bad news is I've never seen a case this advanced in a man of your age, he said, in my entire career. The even worse news is there's not a damn thing we can do for you at all. He said, don't smoke, don't drink, don't let blue light into your eyes. Eat a nice, healthy, balanced diet, he said. Avoid saturated fat and make sure you get plenty of healthy whole grains, he said. But you will be blind, he said, within 5 years. Not a damn thing we can do about it. Sorry about that. $200, thanks.
Oh, my God.
And, yeah, and so you can imagine at 38 years of age being told you will be blind by the time you're 43. Prepare yourself. Suck it up. not what I wanted to hear. So I started looking around for answers. So I started doing some research into stem cells. It was, and even still now today, the technology for treating macular degeneration with stem cells is not reliable, and it involves sticking a large needle into your eyeballs, which I thought, I think I'd rather be blind. Thanks, actually.
Yeah.
If it's a choice between blindness and needles in my eyes, blind it is, I thought.
Oh my God.
Anyway, I came across this company at the time that was it's a predecessor of the Cerule company. The company has changed hands, changed ownership, a bit of a rebranding. Obviously, product improvement has gone on in that 10 years, but basically I've been on it for, 11 years. I've been on it for 11 years now. Anyway, long story short, I am not blind. In fact, my eyesight is better than it was 11 years ago. My prescription for my lenses is less than it was 11 years ago. And a bunch of other things have improved in my life as well, in my health as well, over those 11 years. And the reason for it is because this product promotes the release of adult stem cells from the bone marrow to the blood. And once adult stem cells are in your bloodstream, having been released, the first thing they do is they start to make thousands and thousands and thousands of exosomes every hour. And the exosomes contain RNA, DNA, sometimes fully formed proteins even. And these are able to act as first aid kits, as ambulances, if you like, for any tissues in your body whatsoever that are under any kind of distress. So they can quash down inflammation, they can kill cancer cells off and prevent them from spreading and proliferating. They can do all sorts of things in terms of dealing with infections and injuries and stuff. One of the things they do when they find tissue that cells that need completely replacing with new cells is they'll bind to that tissue and they will actually differentiate into brand new cells of that kind. Heart cells, toenails, anything but hair follicle cells, apparently, James. Yeah.
Now, what, pray tell, is in these supplements? What is
Okay, so this one contains 3 active ingredients. The main one is an extract from a blue-green cyanobacteria that lives in this one lake in North America. Happens to be in Oregon, happens to be Upper Klamath Lake.
Oh, wow.
And it's the only place in the world where this particular species grows in these particular conditions. It's a volcanic lake. There are a lot of nutrients and things that are coming through there that allow this species to produce this one particular active ingredient. The Cerule company have the only process in the world that's able to concentrate and activate this particular substance. It's a patented process, basically. And so there are a bunch of companies that are on the bandwagon selling the stuff out of that lake as just dried algae. That's not going to do anything for you. And it's also going to be probably full of heavy metals, toxins, poisons, neurotoxins, all this kind of nonsense. So I'd stay away from those if I were you. I'd get the Cerule product, and I'd get it from my site, of course. But, yeah, so that's what's in it in terms of main ingredient. So that's an active ingredient which causes your bone marrow to release the stem cell that it would not otherwise release, that it would hold back. Now, a lot of people say, well, are you going to run out of stem cells? Answer is no, because every time you release stem cell, you produce a new one to fill the gap. So it's not that you can never run out of stem cells. It's just that your ability to release the stem cells goes down as you age. And that's programmed into your genes. That's supposed to happen. It's one of the reasons we age and eventually die. So what we're basically doing is flipping the bird off to grandfather time. We're saying, no, thank you. I'd like to age at a bit slower rate. Wow. I should say also that the new cells, when you get a newly differentiated heart cell or a new muscle cell or a new anything but hair follicles.
Wait,
I'm over it now, really.
Are you 49 then? You said you've been on it.
Yeah.
So you're 49.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I'm 49.
now
yeah.
It's interesting to me that you're promoting this algae, as you say, we say algae product,
Sure.
but then you're also the meat militia. So how did you come? I mean,
okay.
You know,
this particular substance It grows in a lake. It grows in filaments. It looks like something that you'd think of as being a plant. People call it algae. It's actually colonies of bacteria.
Okay.
It is not a plant.
Okay, got it.
It's a bacteria.
Weird.
That said, there is one active ingredient in here that is plant-based as well, which is fine. I mean, humans have been using extracts and whole plants for medicinal purpose forever. There's nothing, too concerning about that. So okay, you've got the stuff that releases the stem cells. You've got an anti-inflammatory that's derived from spirulina. Spirulina, by the way, is also a bacteria and not an algae. And the third active ingredient is fucoidin, which was originally discovered by the Japanese, I think about 50 years ago now, Janice. And it comes from a brown seaweed. It's a colloid. It comes out of that. And that's involved in the trafficking and proliferation of the stem cells, basically. So there you go. That's the main flagship product. Release stem cells from your blood, from your bone marrow to your bloodstream. They renew and repair your tissues. Fantastic. It's magic.
What else
I'm
happened
not allowed to
besides
make
your eyesight, or you reversed your macular degeneration? You didn't grow hair.
Yep.
But what else
I
did
didn't
you have?
Well, I mean, I didn't grow hair because it's not really a medical complaint. It's not a problem. My body's quite happy to live without hair, at least on my head. All sorts of things started to improve and improved quite well. I've had a lifelong history of really quite serious mental health issues. That won't surprise many of your listeners, I imagine. Such things involving bipolar type disorder, severe manic depression as a young adult, suicidal thoughts at many times, around that time of my life, and severe anxiety, agoraphobia. Even at one point, I never left my house for a year. I say this and people just don't believe it. You can ask the lady I was with at the time who, will absolutely attest. I never went outside for more than a year. Wow. That was the mental, emotional side of things. On the physical side of things, I had every digestive disorder you can imagine. I've had Crohn's disease, severe ulcerative colitis. I've had it at various times. I've had diverticular disease. I've had pancreatitis as a teenager, so it wasn't alcohol-induced. Gastric reflux, hiatus hernias, the works. In terms of all of that. So I was a very, very unhealthy individual. When I started to take the Cerule product 11 years ago, that was before I had come across the carnivore way of life. Nonetheless, I improved quite a bit on the Cerule product, but not 100%. I didn't get to near 100% health until additionally I added nearly 100% carnivore into my life about 5 years ago. I've been following a ketogenic lifestyle for 25 years now. Wow. So well before that was cool and the thing. I was kind of right on that one right at the beginning of all of that, really, in terms of its resurgence. I mean, we've been living ketogenic lifestyles for 350,000 years, for goodness sake. It's not a new thing. And actually 2 million years before that, but that's another story. So about 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, I was like, okay, fully carnivore it is. And I got as close as I kind of wanted to get to it, which was about 90, 95%. And that got me to sort of 85, 90% health. Wow. And it wasn't until, really January of this year when I did a month of coaching with Raymond, our good friend Raymond Nazen, from MeetRx coach extraordinaire. And his challenge to me was, I want to coach you for a month. And I was like, oh, good luck with that, pal. I'm real coachable. And he said, I want you to go 100% carnivore for a month, not touch any plant material of any kind for a month. And that's what happened over the month. Basically, the bloating, the excess sort of layer of belly fat disappeared. The muscle definition you can see is probably slightly better. I still didn't grow a backside. I still have the washboard, but it's genetic. No glute development. I think that's genetic, just like the male pattern baldness, I guess. Yeah. Oh dear, oh dear. So anyway, I did a month of 100% carnivore in January, and my health got to 100%. Amazing.
Now wait a minute. So if you already knew, 5 years ago that meat was the way, and you're the meat militia man, so why did you never go to 100% along the 5 years?
Well, it's kind of a trade-off, because at the end of the day, I'm still a human being. Believe it or not, folks, I really am, genuinely. I actually, the other thing that people don't realize is they think the way I conduct myself on the YouTube channel, the way I present, the way I talk, the way I throw out the invective and swear at people and all this kind of stuff, they think that's who I am in life. That people say to me, how does Pim live with you? And I'm like, you idiot. Do you really think I behave that way offline as well? Do you think that's how I run my life? No, it's for clicks. Goodness. Anyway, that's an aside. Yeah, so I'm a human being.
About what you're like in your, what do you like in your real life, and why
I'm a constant delight, Janice. I'm hilarious to be around at all times. It's never unpleasant. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I guess what I'm saying is, like anybody else, I am a human being. I have my flaws. I have my foibles. I like a beer and a bit of pizza now and then as much as the next person. If there are crisps to be had, I like a crisp, all that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, well, 95%, and I feel pretty good without really being 100% well. Is it worth I'm going to call it self-deprivation in inverted speech marks, because actually when you've been doing it for a month, you don't feel deprived. You don't feel like you're missing anything. Except my one real stumbling block has always been alcohol. I've been a hedonist right back from as early as I can remember. It was alcohol, it was dope, it was being promiscuous, it was also, believe it or not, in my late teens right through to my nearly late 20s, I was playing guitar and singing in rock bands. I had ringlets, a full head of, a mane of hair and ringlets down to the small, you wouldn't believe it now. A true story. That's really what was going on then. So yeah, it's about maintaining close to perfect health without feeling like I'm putting myself under pressure and having to force down and put down my hedonistic tendencies, my basic personality structure. So it wasn't really until I did a month of full carnivore with Raymond that I realized how much damage that 5% plant material was doing to my health ongoingly. One example is if you just look at that photo, that was 5% plant material in my diet. And
just 1 month, yeah.
In just 1 month, the bloating disappeared, the extra fat disappeared.
There's Raymond.
There he is. Yeah, he's not the sock puppet. He's the one above the sock puppet.
You were coached live by a sock puppet.
Well, I often am, to be fair. Yes, I will. I'll say that too. Goodness, he's so demanding.
He's jealous of that.
He is. He can't stand not being the center of attention. So yeah, that's where it was at with that. And then I suddenly realized 100% really is where it was at. And then I had 2 months in February and March, just finished, where I knew, because of what was going on in my life outside of YouTube and everything else, that it was going to be absolutely impossible for me to stay on that wagon without quite a significant deal of self-discipline, pain and suffering around, basically, as I say, controlling who I am, basically my basic personality structures, being someone other than who I want to naturally be. And so I let it slide for those couple of months. And now it's April and we're back on the wagon where we're nearly 100% at this stage. I mean, okay, I've got, well, I was going to say herbal tea, but this is actually coloured water, really, because when you look at what's in it, there's no oxalate, there's no caffeine, there's no nothing. It's coloured water, to be fair. But, it is derived from plant material, so you can't say I'm 100% yet. Slide back into 100 by the end of the month. And then I think I'll just maintain it because the health difference really is that massive between 95 and 100. You'd think 95% adherence would get you 95% health, and the 5% transgression would only give you a 5% health problem. Doesn't work that way. You get I get 20, 25% health problems out of a 5% transgression. So what I'm saying is it drags my health status down by a quarter, I think.
Wow. And, I want to rewind a little because you keep emphasizing that your reason for not going 100% for those 5 years is because of who you know yourself to be, right? This is your identity. This is the kind of person you are. And my partner, Aaron, I mean, he loves his whiskey. He loves his coffee. And I always wonder, well, what happens if he takes them out? And so my experience has been that when I went on 100% and now I'm on day 88 of ribeye only, that I feel that my personality structure has changed. Like my self-concept, my identity, I'm still like the essence of me. But I wonder whether or not because it kind of sounds like you have maybe a little bit of an addictive brain. You like, hedonism, kind of those activities. It's like that pleasure seeking. My Aaron's kind of like that too. He likes like the adventure and the excitement and all of these.
Oh God, I didn't even mention the coffee, Janice. Goodness, you've probably seen in some of my earlier videos, I had this bucket that I was drinking coffee out of all the time in my videos. It was literally like this huge cup, and I was drinking 7, 8, and 9 of those a day.
Wow.
With heavy cream in each one as well, by the way. Just the amount of caffeine that was going, and it was all instant powdered, oxalate rich, the worst kind of coffee you can drink. And so I was like, But the other thing that I had going on was that for most of my adult life, I've been doing that. And for most of my adult life, I've had elevated blood pressure.
Huh.
When I knocked that coffee off during that month, my blood pressure dropped by 20 millimeters of mercury on both ends.
Whoa.
And it stayed down as long as I stay off the coffee. I've worked out I can have 1 cup of coffee a day and my blood pressure remains normalized and my is normalized. I'm not jacked up on coffee anymore. And yeah, I think it is a rewiring, a total rewiring of the entire system. I also want to reinforce what you're saying about the personality, actually, the way the personality presents changes. When I went carnivore for a month fully, I think Pim would agree with me. I was much more pleasant to be around because I was able to kind of switch off, relax. I wasn't all about work all the time. And we were able to spend some time together and do some things and get out into nature and smell some roses and do that kind of stuff. Whereas when I'm in the trenches in the heat of battle, I can't relax enough to, or even if I am dragged out to do that kind of stuff, it's kind of like, Pim goes, I don't know, I bothered to drag you out here. It's no fun. So it doesn't change. Yeah, it doesn't change who I am on a basic level, but it makes me able to deal with the world. And let's face it, in quite challenging times that we're in at the moment, goodness me.
Yeah.
Unbelievable what's going on.
So so it sounds like you might like your experience of yourself better when you're 100%, in addition to the
Sure.
physical symptoms that
Yep.
diminish.
Yep. So I enjoy me better. Everybody around me enjoys me better. The only part of me that doesn't enjoy it is the part of me that wants to smoke pot, drink coffee, and eat garbage. The hedonist part.
But don't you think that over time, if you gave it long enough, because I used to be like that, where I was a major, I mean, my favorite thing was like cake, cupcakes, and and I would binge eat like potato chips, or you call them crisps, and tortilla crisps. And I mean, we would eat like the whole bag. I would eat like 2 bags myself. And then I was obsessed with like
I actually call them, I called them crisps because I thought Americans called them crisps. We actually call them chips.
chips, because
We
chips
call them
are like
chips.
French fries for us, I think. So,
Yeah.
but I guess what I'm wondering is, over time, that if you gut it out, I feel like over time, at least for me, when I added fat, now I'm on the fatty prime ribeye for 88 days, all of those eventually went away. Where I would
Yeah.
have thought I was an addictive hedonist. I mean, I was like obsessed with food, like 24/7. It was like, when can we eat again? When can we eat again? And I love food. I love the beauty of it. I love the taste, the texture, everything about it. And so I just wonder whether that the hedonism and the obsession with the food and the the pot and the alcohol and the coffee, like it, just like your experience with coffee, do you think that if you gave it long enough that that could subside over time?
Yeah, absolutely. Coffee, no big deal, actually. And I wouldn't go back to where I was with coffee now, because I know absolutely that having elevated blood pressure for a long period of time is not good for my ongoing health. So now I'm able to start the repair process on that. Fantastic. And I don't miss drinking cups and cups and cups of coffee every day. I can have the one in the morning and enjoy that and be done with it. That's fine. Hot has always been, if it's there and it's available, it gets smoked, eaten, consumed, or however it's going in. Pot is not legal in New Zealand, so it's often difficult to come by, and you can't just go to the shop and get some or whatever. So it's neither here nor there. If I've got it, it doesn't last, because I'm in it 5, 6, 7 times a day until it's gone, and then tough, it's gone. So no big deal on that one, really. I don't really suffer when I don't eat plant-based nonsense and chips or crisps, if you like, and whatever else. That's not so bad either. It's the alcohol for me. That's
What kind
the
of
one that
alcohol are you drinking? Can't you drink, because Aaron drinks whiskey and he does fine,
yeah.
seemingly. So what's
Yeah.
your alcohol
Yeah, my issues there are, if I drink spirits, I have no ability to titrate. I will drink too much and I become unpleasant, really unpleasant, actually. So that's kind of off the card. So that leaves me with beer, which is full of sugar and gluten and all sorts of nonsense that plays havoc with me. So then I go to cider, which doesn't have the gluten, but it is full of sugar. So I choose a low carbohydrate version of the cider, but nonetheless, it does still have some sugar in it. And then I'll get like a box of 12 bottles like that, and I will drink that in a day, probably.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just like no ability to titrate or to moderate that hedonistic part of my personality. So it's for me, it's you're either in there with your boots on or it's all off. So I just have to go through that adjustment period where I'm not in it. And as you rightly say, after a period of time, that those cravings disappear. They have for everything else. So alcohol's not going to be any different. It's just going to take a bit longer.
And
is it worth it? Yeah. Sorry, say again?
Does it help you to not bring it into the house at all, or you can't even refrain from buying the case?
Oh, if it's in the house, it gets drunk that day, pretty much.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just a matter of, okay, no more alcohol in the house for the next, and I'll set a time frame. So in January, I did a month of that, and then we're on that bandwagon again now.
So Pim is also going to do carnivore with you. She's also 100%.
Yeah, she's been 95% with me all along, whatever I've been doing the 95% thing. She is of a mind that she feels she does better with a certain amount of plant material. Whether I agree or not that that's the best thing for her to be doing is neither here nor there. She's a willful, independent woman who's going to do her own thing, and frankly, she's got as many qualifications as I've got. So I'm not going to stand in a position saying, "Well, listen here, young lady, I know all about this," because she's just going to tell me where to go, sort of thing. But no, she eats very little plant material as well.
Wow.
Things like if we're having a barbecue, she'll do some onion, for example.
Okay.
If we're having lamb, she will usually marinate that, and there'll be one or two plant-based things involved in that.
So not too
pretty minimal. Yeah, pretty minimal.
Can you tell us how, you're a nutritionist and a physiologist, and you were an academic lecturer, right? So how did you come to, I'm sure they were promoting plants and balanced diets and all that. So how did you end up coming from keto to carnivore through that lens?
Right. Okay. So I think the thing, if anything, that separates me from most academics is that most academics are actually indoctrinated. They are trained, rather than being trained how to think, they are trained what to think and what to say. Actually, it is a very clever, very subtle form of neuro-linguistic programming that you go through. I started my first undergraduate degree when I was 27 years of age. So I'd been around a bit. So I wasn't some kid fresh out of school, ready to be indoctrinated. I'd worked a few things out. I'd tried a few things. My approach when I'm looking at anything to do with science has always been I am purely an empiricist, which means I will look at the numbers. I will look at the outcome statistics as they are presented in a paper, and I will do an independent analysis of those statistics myself. Before I even read what the authors have to say about how they've interpreted their statistics, I will do my own statistics. And I will go, okay, so here's what they are able to assert, here's what they're not, and then go and read what they've said. And that's why I'm always able to usually pretty quickly poke holes in any paper that anyone wants to flash up in front of me and says, here's a paper that proves you're wrong. No, it doesn't actually. If you look at the table on page 7, you will see that, that kind of thing. So when I started learning, the first undergraduate degree I did was sport and exercise science. It was the physiology of rest and exercise, basically. And as part of that, sport nutrition is one of the modules involved in that. And straight away, the concepts that they were teaching us about how the body fuels itself, how muscles work, how the energy system works, it wasn't making sense. It was obviously clearly a line that was being reported or repeated by rote by these lecturers who had been indoctrinated to say this is how it is. And when they were questioned by someone like myself who was a bit more searching for, okay, well, hang on a minute, explain that, they couldn't do it.
Mm.
And it was right back then that I started to realize that the answer was not going to come from a lecturer. It was not going to come from reading a textbook. And neither was it going to come from reading the words that are written in scientific papers, author's conclusion. Usually when you see people splash up a paper, like idiots like Mick the vegan, who will splash up papers for 3 seconds and say, here's a paper that proves my point. What it usually is a statement, a sentence out of its context of even the whole paper, where the authors say such and such. That's not science. Science is the numbers in the results section. What actual numbers did they collect? What is the actual inference they can support with evidence? So that's what I worked out, was that was the place I needed to be. So I taught myself how to do statistics, how to, like, if someone says, I'll give you an example. My students, when I started teaching, when I finished being a student, became a lecturer in my own right and started having my own students, they used to curse me because in the modules where we learned about statistics, I would not allow them to use a computer program to do a statistical analysis, like an SPSS program or something like that students use. If they were doing, for example, a t-test, I would make them do it longhand on a piece of paper using a calculator.
Wow.
I said, if you hand in an output sheet from a computer program that calculated this statistic for you, I'm going to give you an F, because I can train a monkey how to do that. I'm trying to train you how to think as a scientist. At the time, they'd curse me for it, but like invariably in years to follow, they would contact me and say, thank you so much for making us do that, because now I understand how we're having the wool pulled over our eyes. These are people that can go to the papers and pull them to bits and go, here's why this one's no good. Here's where the lies, there it is there. Here's where they're pulling the wool over our eyes, etc. So that's kind of how I developed along those lines. And I think that was probably all underpinned, I think, Janice, by the fact that, I don't know if many people realize it, but I have what's called a mild form of autism.
Mm.
I don't know why you'd call it mild. Anyway, it is what it is. I have a thing called pathological demand avoidance syndrome, which we only actually worked out in recent years, actually, when I was well into my adult years. And the way that we came about that was by a circuitous route. My younger sister started to have her family, and her firstborn son had autism, and he was the first one in the family diagnosed by a clinician. And then we went, well, hang on, there are other members of the family who present the same way, who have been that way all the, we just thought that's what it was. And so we all went through a process, and there was a number of us that turned out to have this particular autism. Anyway, so the pathological demand avoidance thing, how that presents itself, among other things, is that anytime anybody says to me, this is how it must be, this is how you must do something, you are required to, for example, accept this scientific conclusion written by these scientific authors, then I'm going to go out of my way to absolutely prove them wrong.
Wow.
Because anytime anyone says you must comply.
It sounds a little bit like what do they call it? The oppositional defiant disorder. It's a little, but you're
sure, yeah, it's similar, sort of related, yeah. So basically, anytime anyone tells me I must comply, then you can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to do the exact opposite of comply.
Wow.
And so that kind of helps develop along the lines of, really going out of my way to prove things wrong. And people will see that on my channel. They'll see that in my videos. They'll say, all this guy does is tell everybody else they're wrong.
I definitely noticed the theme.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, you've got it. You've clicked on. That's what I do. I prove other people to be wrong about what they are saying. Yes, you've got it.
But when you're lecturing, and what was the curriculum saying at that time about nutrition? Like, what was sort of the trend?
The same thing it says now. It hasn't changed. It says avoid saturated fat, avoid too much meat. Meat will give you cancer. Saturated fat will give you heart disease. So does cholesterol. Your diet should be based on 60% healthy whole grains. All this nonsense, all this garbage that's absolutely fundamentally false to its core, they're still teaching it. I, of course, refused, absolutely, because I will not comply. And, I spent 25 years in academia, and I was finally, at the end of 2018 or so, I finally retired permanently from academia, purely because they made it so damned unpleasant for me, because they were always trying to bully me into following their curriculum document, when actually, when you look at it, in every developed westernized nation in the world, there is a law called academic freedom, which guarantees constitutionally the right of an academic to hold and espouse any opinion he or she should see fit, whether that is popular or otherwise. Wow. So in other words, I'm within my rights to stand up in front of any class of students and say, this is nonsense. And there's not a damn thing they can do about it, except make my life very unpleasant for nearly a quarter of a century. So then I decided I'll give up on doing that, and I'll run a YouTube channel, because no one will ever say anything nasty about me on YouTube. And luckily it hasn't happened. Nobody's had anything negative remotely to say about me at all. The whole time I've been here, it's been great.
But so wait, I know, so you used your tendency to look at the actual numbers, but how did you start to see that they were wrong about the saturated fat and the meat and everything? How did that reveal itself?
Well, the numbers didn't stack up. Well, first of all, the concept didn't stack up. Okay, so saturated fat causes heart disease. Well, why would it? By what mechanism? No one ever was able to give me an answer as to why saturated fat would cause heart disease. But, A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. What is the underpinning causal mechanism here? Why would that be so? No one's ever given me an answer to it, because there isn't one, actually. And then it's only really in recent years that a bunch of major meta-analyses have been done on all the existing studies. And there are actually 5 major meta-analyses, the top 5 available in the literature in terms of sample size, rigors in terms of the design, the disciplines and the design of the studies, and the fact that they're all published in the last 15 years. All 5 meta-analyses agree. Now, there is no question here. They all say saturated fat is not even associated with heart disease, let alone a cause of heart disease. This discussion is done. It's finished. It's over. However, I spent 15 years making the case that says, okay, well, if it does cause heart disease, tell me how. Tell me how it does. Oh, we don't know. We just know it does. How do you know it does? Show me an analysis that says it does. Oh, there isn't one. Oh, except for Ansel Keys with his seven country studies, to which you then go and look at it and you say, well, hang on a minute. Ansel Keys collected data from 21 or 22 countries, not 7. And then you look into it and you find out that he selected the 7 countries that were in line with his hypothesis because of a thing called publish or perish, which is the pressure that all academics face, which is when you are looking for continuation on a year-by-year basis as a lecturer, you are, as part of your workload, you are given you have a discussion with your line manager, and they say, how many research projects are you going to publish this year? And you say, I'm looking for 4 or 5, and they put that into your time, and and you'll be teaching this class over here, and you'll be running these consultancies, and that makes up your full workload, you see. And then if you turn around at the end of the year and say, I didn't publish the 5 studies that I was going to, I didn't publish any at all, actually, they'll say, well, see you then. Bye. No continuation. So publish or perish. So if you're stuck and you need to publish something, then what you do is you have a hypothesis that says saturated fat causes heart disease, and you collect a bunch of data, and then you look at it and you go, oh, it doesn't pan out, it doesn't work. And so you pick the 7 countries that do fall on the line that you want to publish, and you take the rest of the countries' data away, and you publish the 7 and say, look, I looked at data from 7 countries. Didn't I do well? Well, that's what Ansel Keys did.
That's insane.
So Ansel Keys should have spent the remainder of his life in prison rather than being lauded as some kind of savior of the world, because actually Ansel Keys is directly responsible for the untimely death of hundreds of millions of people over the last century or so. Also, it should probably be noted that Ansel Keys was not a nutritionist at all. He was a fish physiologist.
That is insane. Now, when did you figure out that greens and plants were bad?
That's really only in the last 6 years or so. I've been cutting out all plant material pretty much, or 95% up to 100% now for 5 years. It wasn't until I started listening to, originally, the first place I came across it was, of course, Jordan Peterson. And then I became aware of Sean Baker after that. He was about the second bloke that I was listening to in the field. And then I started to sort of listen more widely from there, and then everybody that's involved in the community online with the YouTube and whatever else have more or less become into my consciousness from that point. And the only reason that I hadn't come across that one by myself is that no one had ever suggested that one to me, that, well, actually, here's what happens if you remove all the plant material, because no one to speak of that I knew about was doing it. And it was when I started looking into those people that were doing it that were getting fantastic results. I've always been one to try something different to what everyone else is doing, of course. It's part of my entire presentation. So I was straight on it. Great. And so I've been ketogenic, and I started being ketogenic 25 years ago because very few people were doing it, and it was contrary to what everyone was doing. So therefore I was going to be in it. And it worked. So I kept doing it. It worked to an 80% health level. And then when I finally got rid of all the plants to speak of, that got me to sort of 85, 95, as I've said before. And then that 1 month of 100% was the only time I've ever really been 100% healthy.
Wow. So
Or even
really,
close.
1 month of your life, you've been at 100% health, even with all of your knowledge. So, wow, that is just...
It's not supposed to make sense. Don't worry. It won't. People often say to me, well, with all your knowledge, I'm saying, well, my knowledge has actually got nothing to do with it. It's about who I am as a person. It's my personality. It's how I want to live my life.
Right.
And at times when I'm stressed or distressed or under pressure in some way, then I'm going to revert to base. I'm going to devolve. I'm going to say, sod it. I'm going to eat the chips and drink the beer and eat the pizza and, all of that.
Yeah. So prior to doing keto, like when you were growing up, were you just on the standard Australian diet then, which is kind of like standard American? Or
pretty much. I grew up on the Australian, New Zealand standard diet, pretty much.
Not New Zealand. I get my country.
Look, I'm half Australian, half New Zealand. I've lived in both countries.
Wait, is there a standard New Zealand diet just like standard Australian diet?
It's based on the Australian one, so yeah.
Okay, so it's the same, grains and like meat at the very top.
It's the same. It's the same in all the developed nations. It's standard Western diet, based on the standard American diet, basically. So it's avoid saturated fat. It's limit red meat. It's healthy whole grains. It's healthy seed oils. It's avoid saturated fat. It's all this nonsense. Yep. So I grew up absolutely on that. The worst possible diet that anyone can. In fact, the standard diet is worse than veganism. And I know that's a big thing to say, but it is. It's worse than veganism.
Because of the what factors make it worse, do you think?
Because of the Randall cycle, really, because of the chronic systemic inflammation involved in that diet, because of the obesogenity of that diet. the vegan diet is far superior to the standard diet in the first 3 to 5 years as a vegan. That's why vegans go, oh, I feel so much better as a vegan. What are you talking about, you bigot and whatever else? And it's like, well, you will in the first 3 to 5 years. You'll feel fantastic on a vegan diet until the deficiencies kick in.
Right.
And then you won't feel so good anymore.
That happened to me. Yeah, I did. I mean, I did feel
Yeah.
so much better at the beginning, and then I just really deteriorated. So
Yep.
that makes sense.
Exactly. So if you could achieve the same thing, get rid of that obesogeny, get rid of that chronic systemic inflammation, get rid of all that stuff that's destroying your health and your experience of life, and is also a fully complete diet that doesn't have deficiencies, then I think we've got the utopia. I think we've got the answer. It turns out that diet exists. It's the one we've been eating for 350,000 years. It's meat and fat, animal fat, that is.
That's right.
Fantastic. That achieves the same thing. The problem with the standard diet is mixed macros, mixing fat and carbohydrate together.
Yeah.
It's a thing called the Randall cycle. It's a metabolic piece of machinery that if you eat carbs and fat together, it causes you to become inflamed and fat and destroys your health.
Makes sense. That's what's happening to everybody.
That's why we're obese. That's why we get type 2 diabetes. That's why we get chronic diseases. That's why we die years and years before we should.
Now, you had mentioned that you had, bipolar and all of these, and that you had agoraphobia for a while. And so how did you go from agoraphobia to having the confidence to now be this very vocal out there spokesperson for meat, and then debunking a bunch of how did that happen
Right. Okay. So it is my firmly held belief, my contention, that the vast majority, upwards of 95% of mental health issues are a direct result of inflammation of the brain tissues. So if you undertake a dietary and lifestyle pattern that allows your body to resolve from the chronic systemic inflammation that it's suffering, then your brain inflammation as a tissue in your body will resolve its inflammation, and that will resolve those mental health issues without too much else by way of intervention, really. And that's pretty much what I've experienced. When I went ketogenic, I was less inflamed than I was previous to that. So my mental health improved to some degree. I was still somewhat inflamed because of the amount of plant material I was still eating. So I didn't get fully well. When I started taking the Cerule products, they are powerfully anti-inflammatory as well. That reduced my inflammation load still further. That improved my health still further. About 5 years after I started taking the Cerule products is when I discovered Carnivore. So I removed most of the rest of the remaining plant material from my diet. My inflammation load dropped again. My health improved again. So 10 years ago, there is no way in the world I could have imagined any possibility of putting myself out there and doing the YouTube thing and subjecting myself to, frankly, the kind of vitriol that I get from people online who purely are responding to me that way for no other reason than they don't agree with or like what I have to say. I bring up some of it on myself by the fact that I present myself in a very abrasive fashion on my YouTube channel. And as I've said, I do that for clicks because it works. People want to see who I'm fighting with. People want to see who I'm swearing at. They will tune in to see who's the next victim. And they enjoy not only my potty mouth, but also Yellow Ted's and, that kind of stuff. So that's why I do that. But nonetheless, even if I just present the science, even if I just did that dispassionately. Well, number one, if I did it dispassionately, no one would watch, no one would care, because no one wants to listen to a scientist bang on about science. Okay. But I think if those that are against the ideas that I put forward, that those that believe veganism is the way to go and that we should never eat meat, and that, you know, they believe they have all the science behind them because that's how they've been indoctrinated to think by the high priests of the Church of Anorexia Vegana, for example, they would still hate on me. So I don't think the fact that I'm abrasive actually makes that worse. I think that it just gives them, you know, so I could never have done that. There's no way. I didn't have the confidence for that. There's absolutely, you know, no way I could imagine ever doing that. But now, you know, it's not even so much a confidence issue. It's an issue of being well enough mentally, well enough psychologically, well enough emotionally to deal with the kickback that I get, to deal with the quite significant levels of hate mail that I receive on a weekly basis. Yeah, in order to sort of do what I really genuinely believe is a service to mankind that I do, and that is to educate those who are open enough to being educated and who are stable and balanced enough in themselves to understand why I present myself the way I do, and who actually want to learn some of the nuts and bolts of the actual science. And I think that's why they watch my videos. I mean, okay, some people watch my videos because they like me swearing at people and they don't care about the science, actually. But most people that watch my channel are people who really genuinely actually want to pick up on some of these, you know, how are these so-called scientists that are producing this so-called science that supports the vegan diet, so-called, how are they fooling people? How are they getting away with this? And that's why they watch my channel, I think, because that's what I do, is I pull those studies to bits in front of their eyes and with the numbers, and get out a calculator and say, look, this is what we've got here. Wow. This is what they really are doing. Yeah.
Now, have you had people tell you that they did change their diets and had transformation then?
Yep. Yeah. Many people have told me that they have either taken on a nearly carnivore diet from a not even close situation, or even people who have said, I was somewhere close and now I've decided I'm going to be fully there. And yeah, lots of people have told me that. And some of them have even said it's changed my life incredibly. And, you know, that's the reason I do what I do at the end of the day. That's why I sort of cop the slings and arrows, I guess, from the haters. Because if I can help one person to live a life that's less miserable than it would otherwise have been, it's probably worth it, actually. It's at the end of the day, it's about the people. It's not about me or my needs, because at the end of the day, I've worked it out. I know how I should eat, and I'm going to do that irrespective of what anyone else is going to do. Mm-hmm. So now my mission is getting the word out to as many people as I can, and making as many people as I can understand why it is that what they've been taught their whole life is an absolute load of nonsense.
Mm-hmm. And aside from, you know, big bucks and politics, right? I mean, obviously they're vested interest in keeping people plant-fed, grain-fed, on statins and every other manner of prescription. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, why do you think that the food we eat and diet is such an inflammatory topic for humans?
I think because eating is so much a part of who we are. It's so much a part of culture. It has become ingrained in that way. It is an emotive issue for that reason, I think. you know, you go to any culture you can think of, and they will have their routines around food. They'll have their ideas about food. They'll have their cultures about food. Food being the thing that maintains us, being the thing that keeps us alive, obviously is big in all our consciousnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And to be told that you're doing that wrong is always going to get someone's heckles up, I think. Um, Especially people who are chronically systemically inflamed and thus have reduced capacity to be balanced and have good mental health, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, there's always going to be that incendiary, that inflammatory propensity for talking to people about food.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's what it is, probably.
That makes total sense. And do you believe that world peace can be achieved through carnivory?
Well, peace through carnivory. Hmm. I think what we need to realize about human beings is that peace was never the plan. Peace was never the design in nature. We have a planet which is finite. Its resources are finite. The amount of land is finite. There will always be individuals and groups of individuals competing against other individuals and other groups of individuals for those resources. As such, we are hardwired, we are evolved, our brains are not fit for having world peace or lasting world peace. Conflict is a way of life for human beings, as it is for most animals in the animal kingdom, actually. There are very few animals that are entirely peaceable. I think it's an idea that would be lovely if it was remotely realistic or possible. I don't think it is. Um, and the larger the human population gets on this planet, the more that problem will be exacerbated, actually. There will be more conflict, not less. There will be more wars, not less. The wars will be more extreme, not less. There are periods between major conflicts where there is a semblance of peace, absolutely. But usually those periods of time are the rebuilding of the pressures that cause that pot to boil over again. And I think actually when you think about it, we're in one of those periods right now where there is a world elite who are wanting control of resources, and they view the solution to the problem as to wipe 9 out of 10 human beings off this planet in the next decade or so. That is their plan. Time to put your tinfoil hats on, boys and girls, if you want to. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, that is the plan here. With malice aforethought, there are those who have an agenda. And they say, you know, is this written in stone? Yes, it's written in stone. It absolutely is engraved on some tablets, actually. Goodness. And the plan is to get the human population back under 500 million and keep it there. That means 9 out of 10 of us have to go. And they have a plan to achieve that. They're working on it right now. The ball is rolling. The war has begun.
And is that the commitment behind people keeping people on like a plant-based diet then? Because do they know that your health will degrade, as you say, at 3 to 5 years after being on a plant-based diet? Do people actually know that and that's why they're pushing it? Because I still wonder, why is eating a carnivore diet it's so considered so confronting for people. Like, I just feel like, well, the vegans, why can't they just do their thing and let the meat eaters do their thing? Why is there so much wrath for saying I don't eat
because
plants?
because we are not psychologically designed and predisposed to live and let live. We are a competitive species. We are about divide and conquer. We are about control of resources. And any partisan lines that we can divide ourselves on as a species, historically and currently, we have and we do.
Mm,
White skin is best. Carnivore is best.
mm,
Vegan is best. Brown skin is best.
right.
Whatever it is, if there is some kind of line that we can divide people on,
I see.
people will divide themselves along those lines, and they will compete with one another. And one of those parties will eventually, if not immediately, dominate the other party, and that's the end of it in terms of that particular thing. And then there's a readjustment, and there's a period of apparent peace for a while until the tensions start to boil over again, because we still have the same limited amount of resource
Mm,
and the same amount of wastage, and all of that, if not more. And so it's a cycle that will always continue. And when I say the war has begun, I think the Church of Anorexia Vegana, the theology of veganism, is part of the plan, absolutely, to reduce the vitality, to reduce the likelihood of procreating, to reduce the lifespan of people that undertake that theology, that ideology, so far as to destroy their own health irreparably. Yes, it's part of it is what's going on with the current situation that we won't mention on YouTube, because it gets people banned for a week every time they do it, because you can't say anything true on the YouTube. It's not allowed. There is a nasty undercurrent going on here, and to sit there and say, oh, here we go, tinfoil hats, well, that's just enabling it, actually.
mm,
This doesn't stop until enough people see the light and stand up and make it stop. It's what the Second Amendment is about, actually.
mm,
The Second Amendment is about protecting the First,
mm.
really, when you think about it. That's the most simple way of putting it. And that's the way it ought to be. As it is at the moment, although most countries don't have the amendments, they don't have the same constitution that you do in the States, it's the concept that's important here. That being that the First Amendment is absolutely gone. It has been breached. It has been destroyed, and it's been allowed to occur.
Mm.
The Second Amendment is now under threat as well, because if you want to control a population, first you must divide them and set them against each other. And secondly, you must disarm them.
Mm.
So that's what's going on with regard to that. And then, domino on domino on domino, and it leads to the point where in a decade or two from now, if we don't stop it, they will win, and 9 out of 10 of us will be gone.
Mm.
Anyway, a nice positive way to sum up, but
Well, I mean,
that's where it is.
okay. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying and the big picture here. So, what would you say to an individual who
Mm.
knows that if they try this way of eating? I've had some people actually reach out to me recently, and they're, whatever they call it, carnivore curious. And
Mm-hmm.
because I'm doing this podcast and they've seen my results, they've seen others, and it's like they're definitely curious. But before they even really get into it, they're already worrying about their spouse. They're worrying about what people are going to think. They're worrying that, like, it breaks their paradigm of thinking that they need to have at least, people can get behind keto or whatever and know that at
Mm.
least they're going to have vegetables on the plate. They literally
Mm.
are worried about, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to pretend to eat vegetables when I'm at a meal with my family? So, what would you say to the individual who is just aware of all of this, like, pressure to be plant-based, but they want to try, they feel like there's something potentially there in this way of eating. It sounds like, oh, we've been eating this way for, millions of years or however long we've been around. What
Yeah.
would you tell them about how to frame it for themselves?
I it's something that my grandmother used to say to me that I'll probably truck out here. She used to say, son, don't worry about what people are thinking. They are not.
Mm,
They are not thinking, actually. Don't worry about what people say to you either. Their words have no power whatsoever over you. None. Unless you actively participate that and give those people that power over you. Do you want to be the wolf or do you want to be the sheep?
mm,
At the end of the day, the lot of the sheep is not great. Unfortunately, in human nature, the vast majority of human beings are apt to be sheep. That's where the term sheeple comes from.
mm,
That's why those of us who are wolves poke fun at those of you who are sheep, who want to, oh, we must comply, we must follow with what we're being told, we must respect the authority of the academic institutes. We must respect the government. They have our best interests at heart, after all, of course. Um, we can't step out of line. We can't be seen to be different or the pioneer or whatever. That's too uncomfortable. And that's how you're trained. That's how your entire experience in a Western nation is from a very young age. You are taught to get up at a certain time of the day, to follow a certain protocol, go and eat some breakfast, healthy whole grains, of course, with lots of sugar and dairy, because that's good for you. You are taught to go and stand in a certain place and wait for your ride to school. You are taught to get on that bus with all the other sheeple and bleat your way there to the school premises. You are taught to respond to a bell which tells you to enter a certain room. You are taught to sit there in a certain way, behave a certain way. You learn things by rote. Another bell tells you when you can have a wee and something to eat. Another bell tells you that time's finished, etc. And then you go to work and it's the same thing. Your whole life has been about training you to comply.
yep. Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, the facts are in, the science is settled. It is clear what the appropriate diet for a human being is who wants to live the longest life possible, the healthiest life possible, who wants to thrive, who wants to prosper. That is 100% carnivore. No question. There is no debate to be had any longer. I will not entertain any further debate on this. The science is in. Nitrogen 14, nitrogen 15 isotope testing settles this by itself. Done. We're finished. People can stand up on their soapbox and say the Church of Anorexia Vegana says otherwise as much as they like. They will be the subject of my videos ongoingly explaining why what they're saying is absolute nonsense. And anyone that wants to listen obviously will learn that. That's what the diet should be. If you want, for you, if you want the longest life possible, if you want the best health possible, if you want to thrive, if you want to, all of those things, then you can't negotiate with this. I've tried. That's what half this discussion's been about. It's been about me trying to negotiate with this and failing because it will not negotiate with me any more than it will negotiate with you.
Mm,
At the end of the day, if you want those things, you must comply with your genetic predisposition, your genetic gift, your sociological gift, your evolutionary gift, and that is to eat animals, and only animals, actually. Or if you're worried about what your spouse thinks, or your brothers and sisters think, or your parents think, or aunts and uncles, or whatever else, and you want to comply with what they want you to do or what you think they want you to do, well, you can do that too. But you'll also pay the consequences of doing that. So it's a decision you're going to have to make. Pioneers cop the most arrows. So you're going to have to be prepared that the best adage for this actually is the crab bucket one. If you've ever had a bucket of crabs at the beach that you've collected up, you'll watch them for a while. At some point, one of the crabs will decide, sod this for a game of soldiers. This can't go anywhere good. I'm going to climb out of this bucket. And as soon as that crab starts climbing out of that bucket, the other crabs will grab it and drag it back in.
Yep.
Don't you dare step out of line. Don't you dare. How dare you think for yourself? How dare you? If we're going to die in this bucket, you're going to die in this bucket with us.
Oh,
and frankly, I don't care if those other crabs are related to you or not, by blood or by marriage or anything else. If you want to live free outside of that bucket, you got to climb out of that bucket. And you got to be prepared to defend yourself from those other crabs that want to pull you back in.
oh,
So
brilliant.
Get tough. Really?
That's so brilliant. That's exactly it. That's it. And thank you so much, Bart. This has been so incredibly enlightening. Can I ask you a final question about Yellow Ted?
Of course you can. Yes, you can. It's always about Ted in the end, isn't it? God.
Well,
Okay, Ted.
really,
come on then. Come on.
He's actually
come on
really why we invited you to the show, is so we could spend
Of course.
time
Yeah,
with
okay,
Yellow
yeah.
Ted. You're
You put up with me
grateful,
so that you can talk to him. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
but we love him. So is Yellow Ted a carnivore?
Yes, of course. He eats no plant material at all. He never has eaten a single plant ever.
Can we hear Yellow Ted's voice?
Well, I don't know if you'll be able to hear him or not. He usually is pretty sparing with his verbiage, shall we say. Sometimes when I'm doing this kind of thing, sometimes Yellow Ted's microphone doesn't work quite the way it should. Other times it does. Usually what happens is I ask Ted what his opinion is on something. So I'll say to Yellow Ted something like, so what do you say to Dr. Crackpot of the Church of Anorexia Vegana when Dr. Crackpot says that absolutely the best diet for human beings is the vegan diet? Well, what would you say to Dr. Crackpot? And Ted usually says, bollocks. Did you hear him?
I did. Great job.
Oh, there you go. It worked. There you go. It worked.
I'm so glad that we got to hear from Yellow Ted tonight.
Excellent. I'm so glad that we could help. And Ted's much happier now. He's had his say. Now he won't be quite so insufferable afterwards. He'll say, "You hogged the whole thing. You didn't let me have anything to say." And well, you did, Ted. There you go.
I'm really glad he got some of the airwaves here. So, oh my God, Bart, this has been so fantastic. I love listening to you talk, and so far I've only gotten to have, either watching you on your channel, or we do, our roundtable discussion with Thomas Clark. So we're really honored that you came on the show. And I really think that based on what you said, it's like no one can listen to this and deny the facts, the evidence. So I really appreciate you coming on. This is going to be a great conversation to share with anyone who's just thinking about this, or even people who are already on it, like myself. And we sometimes feel that doubt from the pressure that you get, and so many people reacting to you saying, I don't eat plants. It's like you hear it so much, this huge reaction, like they will literally stop talking to you because they think you're such a freak, So thank you so much, Bart. And we'd love to have you back after you, since you're starting Carnivore again, so we can have you back and see how it's going with 100% instead of 95. So
awesome. No, thank you very much. It's been my absolute privilege and an absolute pleasure, of course, Janice, to be here. I hope that it's something that people can get some value from. Perhaps it's another side of me that people haven't seen before. I don't normally engage in such open discussions, really. So there you go. It must be your interview skills, I guess. They're generous.
Well,
Thank you for having me.
I've been so curious about you, so I really appreciate you being open and sharing from your more personal perspective. I do think a lot of people are going to be curious to hear what you have to say on that level. So thank you so much, and good luck to you with your 100%. And we'd love to have you back in the future. So take
Awesome.
good care since you're in the future. So we'll see you next time. Thank you, Bart.
Yeah.